Sure. Okay, we're recording now, right? Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
How's it going? Going good?
Yeah.
This is an engine. What do
I don't
y'all?
believe you.
You don't believe me?
Yeah.
What do y'all want to know about it? Everything?
Yep.
Alrighty then. Cool. So we all know it needs, which it doesn't have in there right now. So this big guy right here, you can kind of see have these large nodule kind of things. And then you can kind of see, can you see those nuts right there? Right here? Can you?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so those nuts and that flat spot right there, that's actually the bottom side of the piston. And these large nodule things, that's called the camshaft. And what these nodules do is kind of act like weights. And so as it shifts around, it uses its momentum to kind of help the engine move along. So you have your camshaft, or your crankshaft, I'm sorry, that's your crankshaft right there. And then your camshaft is all the way up in here. I don't know if y'all can see it. Probably move y'all in a little bit closer to see it. Sorry, I'm having to work with my computer here. So you kind of see it back there. And flashlight, work with me. Really can't. Anyway, so come on. Very carefully. So back here, you'll see like two polished surfaces. All right. Those polished surface back there, it goes all the way down. You can see them back there too. That's going to be your camshaft. And what that does, all right, so remove that plate real quick. So that camshaft, well, one of them fell out, so that kind of helps. This guy right here, this is your lifter. So what it does is on this polished surface, it kind of had like a little nub on it. And this flat side is on the inside there. And every time it runs across that nub, it pushes it up. So it pushes it up and then it falls back down. And these here are your push rods, all right? Your push rod sits on the top like this, all right? And it has a little recess that it can sit in. It sits in there like that, and so every time it goes up, it pushes this rod up and down, right? And then there's also a little hole on the inside there, and a hole that runs all the way up this push rod for oil to go through. Okay. So it kind of sits in there like that. And then you got this big old guy right here, which y'all probably can't see. Yeah, y'all can't see it. So this guy here is called your head, and these springs right here. So this push rod it comes up on in this side here, and then it hits the bottom of these guys. Let me get a flashlight. Here you go. So these guys right here. So it sits in the bottom. There's kind of a recess for it to sit in right here too. And these are called, so these are your push rods. Those are your lifters. These are called your rockers. And your rockers compress your valve right here. You see that there's a spring on it as well. All right, so that spring kind of keeps tension on this valve. Okay, we're good. And then here you can see the valves right here and here. And so now you kind of see how it all interconnects. I can tell you how it kind of works all together. Put you back up here. All right, so we have that. So we have the engine rotating. And there you can see the piston heads right there, right? So you have little small explosions on the inside here. That happens several thousands a second. And they fire in a certain order. So you have an explosion. It pushes the piston down, all right? And at that time, both of those valves down there are closed. So say this one just exploded. It pushed down. Well, then that means, say, this one, it's now compressing an air and fuel mixture over here. And then that explodes, moving it along and pushing this one back up. And this next stroke that comes up, one of those valves open and it lets the exhaust out. So now this one has exhaust, this one just let exhaust out. So then say this one down here fires. So that one fires, it pushes this one up to let the exhaust out. And then this one's just kind of free. It's kind of, it just pulls in fuel air mixture on this one, right? So now we have fresh fuel air mixture on this one. This one just exhausted. This one just exploded. And then now it's down. And then this one explodes. It pushes that one down, and then it compresses this fuel air mixture. So then it can explode, and it has that entire rotation. Most of your engines, when they call it 4-cycle engines, there's 4 strokes in the cycle. So an explosion, exhaust, intake, compression. And each cylinder does that 4 strokes for one cycle. So now we got the engine rotating. This crankshaft is moving in circles, right? And it's directly connected to your pistons down here, like I showed you earlier. All right. And it's rotating this over here, which is your flywheel. And since this engine is cooled by pulling in water from the drive, the rear drive. So it's pulling in water from down at the bottom of the drive. through the pump. So there's a pulley right here, and then there's this belt. And this belt is held in tension to another pulley up here, which rotates the water pump up here, letting water flow through it for cooling. And then out here, there is this piece that bolts to the flywheel, right? So when it bolts to the flywheel, so it bolts to the flywheel, and then this fits in like that, right? So since it's bolted to the flywheel and the flywheel's spinning, then this will spin as well. See? So it's spinning and it's rotating the propeller. On car engines now, so car engine works the same way here, but this is kind of your transmission, kind of between this and the internal gears in this thing. And all piston engines work like this. The transmission takes the rotational force of the engine and translates it to horizontal force. So this is vertical. All this force is vertical, right? And then your wheels are spinning horizontally or on a horizontal axis. So that's what the transmission does, is it transfers the vertical motion into horizontal motion and rotates a drive shaft. And depending on whether you're front wheel drive or rear wheel drive car will depend on how that transmission translates that force. This boat engine, however, it just kind of directly translates it to this drive here, and then the gears transfer it to the propeller down at the bottom. And then there's also a water pump in here to pump water up to the engine water pump. So there's like 2 water pumps on this thing. So then also on the flywheel is where the starter mounts to. So you can kind of see teeth. You can probably see teeth. And that's where the starter has teeth on it that fit in between those teeth. And that's how you start the engine, is the starter rotates the flywheel. Rotates the engine, and the engine starts firing, and then it can start running on its own. And then once the engine's running on its own, the flywheel or the starter disengages from the flywheel, allowing it to rotate freely. That's also why while your car is running, if you try to start the starter again, it'll make that really weird noise. You'll probably tear up your starter. That's an engine. What are your questions?
Is this for a boat?
Huh?
I was gonna
Is this for a
ask,
boat?
what is this engine from?
Yeah, it's from our boat. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to ask because I was like, wait,
Oh,
with Tyler, I was like, is it a car? Is it a plane? Is it?
All of the above. Really, between planes, cars, and boats, if it's a piston engine like this, there's really no difference. The only
Okay.
difference is how it translates the force caused by the engine.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a question, Keshav?
nope. That was if it was for a boat or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the boat.
I was wondering why you had just had a spare engine to experiment on.
Yeah.
But also, it's exactly something Tyler would know and have.
So this guy right here, this is, I think, goes to the oil filter, because you can just follow this line up here, and then there's this bulbous thing right here. I don't know what it is. Probably some type of pump,
Mm-hmm.
and then it runs right up into the oil filter that's right here. So I would guess is either an intake for the oil filter or an outflow for the oil filter, one of the two. Also, you may be able to see kind of like this gunky stuff that's kind of up in the oil filter here, or screen right here. that gunky. Have y'all seen the gas station commercials talking about sludge and help prevent sludge buildup? This gunky stuff is that sludge that they're talking about. And basically what it is all that oil in your car. It's kind of the minerals inside of that oil kind of clumping together. So it's that's why you usually change your oil when it's hot, because this sludge and stuff is usually hot and it's kind of floating inside the oil and kind of thing. It's kind of mixed in real well. So when you do your oil change with hot oil, it gets all this sludge or some of this sludge out, so it's not building up inside your engine. So yeah, on an airplane, some airplanes the propeller can pitch, and they do it through oil pressure. So the oil that's inside the engine, they actually shove some of that oil to the propeller to help it turn. That kind of helps with fuel efficiency and aerodynamics in the air. I've pulled a propeller off where it uses the oil pressure to change the pitch of the propeller. When you pull that propeller off, all that centrifugal force has caused all the minerals inside the oils to cake to the sides like clay. And so I've like pulled this clay type stuff out, and it's like gray and thick. It's pretty weird.
Thick.
Yeah.
Thick with the triple C.
Get this guy out of here. This is mine. Push rod. This guy here. This is the fuel filter. There's kind of two fuel filters on this thing, really. I have a gas tank that's sitting on the floor back there from the boat as well. It has on one of the fuel lines, it's the intake for the engine. It actually has kind of like a little fuel filter that you can buy from like an auto parts store or something. It's a real cheap thing. It has one on that. It also has this right here. And basically, if I open it up, there's like a little screen in there that catches large sediments and stuff from getting inside the pistons. Because the name of when you're working on engines and stuff, and then also intake and oil and intake of fuel, you want to keep as much of the sediments out as possible, because it can score the inside of the cylinder walls, and when it does that, it allows air pressure to not build up, because it'll seep past the rings. It'll cause a large amount of oil burn. So oil is getting into the compression stroke, and then or more oil than that's naturally there, because some oil stays on the cylinder walls, and it's just to help keep wear from the cylinder walls as the pistons are moving up and down. So there's always a little bit of oil in the cylinder walls. But if you have large scores and marks on the cylinder walls, it allows oil to seep into it, and also for those exhaust gases to seep out. And so it doesn't help with compressions or anything. So that screen is to keep those large sediments out of it. And then also this guy here, this kind of bulbous looking thing, that's my oil pressure unit. So it senses the oil pressure and have a gauge up on the console that lets me know my oil pressure. It's the same if you look at your car, you usually have an oil temperature sensor that has a gauge on it and lets you know your oil temp. But also when you have that oil pressure or that oil light that comes on, that's your oil pressure light. And that'll come on letting you know you have low oil, and it does that by sensing oil pressure. Make sense?
Yep.
Any other questions? No? Okay, cool.
You just gotta keep telling me
This little guy here, that's just for your oil dipstick. It's just a hollow tube. Nothing to it. Hey, I don't think so. You got everything. So I'm gonna put a little bit of this back together because it doesn't need to stay open. One thing is whenever there's a gasket, you can't really see it because it's kind of a dark color, same as everything else, but there's a gasket around here. When you're doing work like this, usually when you take stuff off and it has a gasket, when you put it back on, you want to change the gasket because when you take it off, there's a seal that's been, from it sitting there and running, there's been a seal that's been made between the oil and the gasket. I'm not doing that because before this boat or this engine goes back in the boat, I'm gonna tear it apart again and then put new gaskets on everything. But as far as I know, that's a little ways away, so I'm not really worried about the gaskets right now. I can't turn the engine itself. I can't make the pistons go up and down because on this side, this engine stand wasn't really made to hold it. So what I'm doing now, these arms are attached to this flywheel, preventing it from moving. So I can't really spin the engine. All right. So if you do maintenance on your engine at home, you need to get a book for it. The main reason is there's a lot of parts on here. Like I'm about to put the oil pan on, and there's bolts that go all the way around, and then the book has a specific torque that it calls for. You have to, and you do that through a torque wrench, which I'll go get here in a second. So this book will tell me what I need to torque it down to. Let me get to the section real quick. Engines. Probably 132. All right, so so there's a big chart right here with a bunch of torque listings. So I know this engine is a 3.0 liter. So here it is. I see 3.0 liter. Crank pin bearing. Oil pan bolts. All right, so it says right here, it says sides. I need an 80 inch pound. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the sides here. And then it says ends, I need 45 inch-pounds. So there's a bolt right here. So there's 4 total, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the ends, and those need to go to 40 inch-pounds. All right. Let me go get my torque wrench real quick. All right, so I have my torque wrench here. You can kind of see it's marked, right? So this is the inch, there's an inch-pound side, and there's going to be a Newton meter side. All right, so we're going inch-pounds because that's what we're given our, what we've been given, all right? And there's a 0 right here. All right, so that 0, when lined up with that vertical line in the center, right? There's a vertical line. So when that 0 is lined up with that vertical line, you're at 0. Well, really, there's a lower limit set here. All right, so there's a lower limit. This one goes down to 30. I don't know if y'all can see 30 right there. But the lowest is 30. So once that 0 is lined up with that vertical line and your horizontal, so you have a horizontal portion right here. And when that horizontal portion is lined up with your 30, because there's also horizontal lines along next to the vertical lines, once you line it up, I'm at 30 inch-pounds right now. So what I do is pull that collar down, and then I'll twist it upwards until it says 80 inch-pounds. All right, so now my 0 is lined up with the center, and my horizontal is lined up with 80. So I know I'm at 80 inch-pounds right now. So goes on like that. And, all right, they're over here. Now I'm just going to initially do it with my my drill here, but that's just to get them started. Should probably get the right size socket in there. Probably 7/16. This one's giving me a hard time. Got it. Yeah. Is not liking me today. I'll be right back. I need to get another tool. How's it going? Join yourselves. Everything okay? All right, that's that one. That's it. And then 4 more. All right. They're all initially down. I'm gonna take my torque wrench. I like your M&Ms, Alex. Or no, that's Keshav.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's Keshav.
Yeah.
So remember, I have my torque wrench set to 80. The one's on the side. That's not the right side socket though. I need 7/16 here. Do I hear that click?
Yeah.
That click is the torque wrench letting you know that you reached your set value that you set here. So I have it set to 80, and every time it clicks, it's letting me know it's at 80 inch-pounds. That I put 80 inch-pounds of force on the bolt down here, and it'll click every time. And usually for good measure, I like to go around and check them all again. Because as you tighten them up, some may come loose just because everything got tightened down. So those are the, and then the book says the ends are 45, I believe. So how you set 45 is I like to go down and set it at 40. So now I know I'm at 40, right? So my zero is lined up with the center with the inch pounds, and then my horizontal is lined up with a 40. You also have tick marks for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you just line up the 5 with the vertical, and now you know you're at 45 inch pounds. I'll be talking on here. All right, so now everything's all torqued down. So that oil pan is installed. I'll be taking it back off to swap out the gasket. Or it's installed. And what I like to do with my torque wrenches is just healthy for them, because the way these things work, there's a bunch of springs that are preset in there. And if you keep it set to halfway up or anywhere in between, it keeps those springs compressed, and over time it causes them to wear out. So I take my torque wrench and I set it on its lowest value. So the lowest value on this one is 30 inch pounds. So I'll set it to 30 inch pounds. And that way I know that I'm not compressing the springs more than they need to be, and I'm not wearing them out. Also, dropping them isn't healthy for them, so I keep mine in a case. So if I drop the case, or at least the torque wrench is at least somewhat protected. You're not damaging it. So I have the oil pan installed. If you see, there's a bolt right here. I'll take it out real quick and show y'all. This guy here, there's a small gasket. This one's plastic, a plastic gasket on here. You can kind of see it. That's the gasket. So just like all other gaskets, it forms a seal. You don't have to replace this one every time you take it off. It's good to, but you don't have to. And then this side is actually magnetized. So if you get like little chips of metal just from the engine running and wearing down, this magnet on the end of here will catch all the metal particulates in your oil, so that it's not running around in your pistons and wearing them out sooner. And like I said before, piston engines are pretty much similar across the board. So if you look at the bottom of any engine, it'll have an oil pan, and it's kind of defined by, it's just kind of featureless and there's nothing attached to it. And it's just a single bolt head sticking out of it. That single bolt head is the drain plug. And there's technically a torque for it, but what I like to call German specs, good and tight. As long as you get it good and tight, you're good. All right, so that's the old drain. So when you go drain, when you're changing your oil, you want to drain the old oil out. You just take that bolt out there. And here's the oil filter. Now, not all oil filters are made the same. Not all oil filters will match with every engine. They're all different sizes and they have different threads in them. So you need to make sure you get the right oil filter. I hope this is the right one. I don't really know. I just kind of Googled it. So I guess we'll find out here in a second if it's the right one. Because auto parts store, they don't have boat books, they have car books. And so just like that, you want to be careful when you take the oil filter off because oil will come out because there's oil in here. You want to clean off your mating surface if you can. Sometimes it's hard to get to it. And if you see here, there's this black ring. It's kind of rubbery. That's the seal for it. What you want to do, take your oil, open, take your oil, put your finger in it a little bit, get a little bit on the top of your finger. And you want to rub it all over that rubber gasket right there. And that'll create a seal just like it does everywhere else on the engine. Looks like it's the right size. There's a torque for this. Once again, good and tight, and you'll be okay. There's even a little hex head down here to help you out if you need to. That should be good. And then once you get to this point of changing your oil, once all the oil's out down here, change your oil. What I like to do is I like to drain my oil. And then once it gets to a point where I can just leave it alone and I don't have to monitor it, I'll come and change my oil filter and leave it draining. Once my oil filter is changed, then I'll plug it up because then I know as much oil that I need to get out is out of there. And then I'll plug it back up down here. So now I'm plugged down here, empty oil, new filter. Then I can just go just dump my oil in. Once again, you need a book because it'll tell you you need to put this much oil in there because you put too much oil in there, you'll start burning oil and it's not good for your engine. You put too little, you get that low oil pressure issue, which the engine becomes starved for oil and it's not very lubricated on the inside. It wears down more. So there's a happy medium that you need to be in. And that's why on the dipstick, it has this, it's either crosshatched or it's marked either add one. This one's marked add 1 quart or full. Just as long as you're in between those marks, you should be good. I know for a fact my car, the manual says 4.7 quarts of oil. And then every time you buy oil, it comes 5 quarts. I know my car likes the whole 5 quarts because I can also look at my book and it says idle RPM. So I just start my car and let it run and let it sit and let the oil warm up. It says idle RPM is supposed to be between 1600 and 1700. Well, if I put 4.7 in there, it runs a little below 1600 RPMs. But if I put the full 5 quarts in there, that'll run about 1650. So right there in the middle. So I just dumped the whole 5 in my car. The boat, however, honestly, don't know. Sometimes it's marked on the dipstick. This one's not. So go over here to my book again. And then, actually, it's probably not going to tell me. Probably go to the chapter summary, and probably go to. Oh well, it won't tell me in the chapter summary, so I'll go to the beginning. Timing gear, camshaft, oil pan, 152. Chances are it'll tell me how much I need to put in after the reinstallation of the oil pan. Working center, install the starter motor. Fill the engine in the boat as described in this chapter. Fill the crankcase with an oil recommended in chapter 4. So I need to go to chapter 4 and it'll tell me. A lot of hopping around. Probably has a table in the back here. Viscosity. All right, approximate engine oil capacities. Mine's a 3.0 liter, so 4 quarts of oil. So it needs 4 quarts. Here's where it gets kind of sketchy because I don't trust this engine mount very much. You can probably read down here. It says it's rated for 750 pounds. Sitting as is, I think is about 450, 500 pounds. So it's already approaching that 750 weight, and that head down there is probably like 30, 40 pounds. So I don't really trust this engine mount to hold this with the head on top of it. So I kind of have to figure out a way to dump oil in here without the head, because if you put the head on there and then the head cover, so the valve cover, it has, just like every other car, it has that twist cap that says oil on it. That twist cap with a large opening, that's where you put the oil in. But I don't have that. So kind of got to figure out which one of these holes. So remember, the push rods go here, 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 and here. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I guess something I forgot to mention, there's 2 push rods for every cylinder, and there's 2 valves for every cylinder. That's because one set of valves is going to be your intake valves, and then your other set of valves are going to be your exhaust valves. And so they alternate when they open to let out exhaust or let air in. So that's why there's 2 for every cylinder. Right here, that's water. That's kind of where the water goes. That's for the coolant and everything. Water coolant. It's kind of rusted in there. I don't know if y'all probably can't see it. It's rusted in there because that's where water is. It's gonna happen. So I know that's not where I need to put oil. Push rods. Those 2 sets of holes right there. It's right there, there, and there. Those sets of holes are where the head bolts down to. So there's a metal gasket that sits right here between the mating surfaces, and then you bolt it down, and there's torque specifications there, and those definitely need to be to the specifications of the book, because if you don't get them tight enough, you could cause oil to leak out. You get them too tight, you may break a bolt in there. So you really need to make sure that you have it at the right torque. I don't know. I may not just put oil in it. Yeah, I'm probably just not going to put oil in it. Probably be the safest option because I don't know where to put it. So yeah. That's the engine. I'll show you all the starter. So this big old guy is your starter. All right. On the inside here, you can kind of see those gears in there. Those teeth right there for that gear is what engages on the flywheel and turns it over. And the way this guy works is power goes in right here. I don't know the very nitty-gritty details, but I know it plugs in right here. And power goes in right here, and it causes a polarity change in the wires because the wires on the inside here are coiled. And that polarity changes causes this gear to extend. I can't really pull on it. It's kind of spring loaded and causes it to extend outward. And that's when it engages those teeth. And that's you turn the key. So you turn it and then you turn it a little bit more and it starts cranking, right? Those gears engaging the flywheel and then turning. All right. And then when you let go, it disengages the starter and it pulls back in. All right. So that's how the starter works. And so once it turns the flywheel, then it turns the engine, and then the engine can start shoving fuel in and exploding and stuff. So y'all know that the sound you hear when you turn the key, when it goes, that's the starter you're hearing. That's the starter going over and then engaging the engine, and then maybe you'll be able to feel, especially if you have really bad engine mount, you'll feel the engine shaking, and that's the engine kind of trying to turn over. But when the engine's running and you hit your key, I've already talked about that. I was just going to say, that's the sound that you hear, those gears on that Bendix trying to engage the flywheel. Yeah, that's what I've already told them that. Oh, okay. I just want to make sure that you did, because you just started talking about the starter. Yeah, no, I covered that in the beginning. It's all right. Y'all got any questions? Sun's in my face now, so I'm making weird faces.
Nope.
Here, I'll pull apart this fuel filter or screen real quick. Show y'all what's on the inside there. I'm glad I pulled this apart, because it does not look like what it needs to look like. Yeah, there we go. All right. So right here, I don't know what this material is. I don't know. I guess the closest thing I can relate it to is like soapstone or something. You got a spring here. It's all rusted on the inside there. Yeah, you kind of see it's rusted on the inside there. So this is what it's not supposed to look like. I can clean that out, but probably need to get a new spring. This is kind of different from what I'm used to, so I don't exactly know how it works. Spring loaded. Look at that. Fuel bowl. Yeah, that's not good. Yeah, good on the other side. So yeah. So the way this guy works, fuel goes in on this nozzle or this hose right here. There's a hose that hooks up right here. Fuel goes in, and there's a screen on the inside here that kind of filters out the large particulates, and it kind of creates a bowl here. Fuel goes out here into, no, this is the return from the carburetor, which is something else I got to show y'all. This is a return for the carburetor, and this is goes to out or to the carburetor, I believe. Not seeing it so much. This right here. So yeah, I'm gonna carburetor. Probably, yeah. All right. So here's a carburetor. This is old technology. Old. They start getting phased out probably 20, 30 years ago. Just because we went to fuel injection. My dad tells me more like 40 years ago, so tells you a lot about this technology. So we started going to fuel injection because it's way more efficient. You can control the flow of fuel better, and you get a better fuel air mixture. But so what this does is, so on the back here, so this is the back, this kind of square here on the inside is a little reservoir that it holds. All right. And then let's see, here we go. If I open it up on the inside there, let's see. All right, you see that circle in there? There's two sets of circles in there. They kind of look similar. Those are called the jets. All right, the fuel jets. And what that does, it takes the fuel. So depending on how much this guy is open right here, will controls how much fuel it pulls out of the reservoir and into the carburetor. And then it comes out this side, and depending on your throttle settings, depends on how much is open. All right. And then there's a bunch of fine tuning on here. That's why a lot of times if you pay someone to rebuild one, it's really expensive because it's just really fine tuning and really small parts on the inside. But it's all connected in a way that, then also you have this guy here, which is, I forget what it's called, but it automatically opens these guys down here depending on the temperature of the engine or your throttle setting. It takes in a bunch of factors, and it's just I can't remember what it's called, but it's like it's a spring, and then every so often it changes the type of metal that it. So say take a steel. Steel comes in several different micro granular structures, and depending on the structure, it heats up or when it heats up and it expands, it does it differently. And so all along this coiled up spring, every so often it changes that microgranular structure, and depending on how hot it is, how hot that spring is will depend on how much it opens. So automatic choke is what it's called. So that way everything runs smoothly and stuff like that. So air comes in this direction. So there we go. Air comes in there. All right. Fuel jets inject the fuel, and then coming out of the other end is your fuel air mixture that gets injected, quote unquote, into the cylinders to allow it to fire. And that's what's exploding on the inside, is that fuel air mixture. So I will set this over here. What else could I go over? I don't really have anything else, I don't think. Any questions?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. I'll see what goodies I have on the shelf over there, see if I can come up with something. All right, here I got an alternator. So this guy is what's charged with keeping your battery charged. Pun there. Basically what it is there is wires coiled up in here, and their polarity is, when everything's running, the polarity is set. Then you have a set of magnets, or really brushes, on the inside. And brushes are not like a paintbrush or anything. It's more like a kind of like a soft metal block, kind of. It's the best way I can describe it. And it runs, so it's touching this surface consistently, and as it's turning, as it's turning, that contact generates electricity, changing the polarity. So the polarities aren't set, I'm sorry. So as it's turning, it's changing the polarities of the wires because of the magnets that's running around. As those polarities change, it causes a potential difference, and that potential difference is what shoves electricity to your battery and to your other components, keeping everything charged and running. And usually when your alternator goes out, what happens is your brushes, they wear down to a point that they can no longer maintain contact with that surface. So alternator. The way it turns is that this pulley, not the pulley, but belt. Thank you. The belt is in contact right here, and so it's maintained tension, and it turns this. So when it turns this, it turns those brushes and everything, changes polarities, causing a potential difference, and going all the way to your battery. That's an alternator. Okay, questions about an alternator? Okay.
No, those I do know.
You haven't changed one?
That's like the one. Yeah, I have.
But that was fun.
Fun is a very, very strong word.
Let's see. So go ahead and put this. Huh? Why not? I'm gonna put this fuel bowl back on. Jeez. Oh, there we go. And where's my ratchet? Where's my ratchet? There it is. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the engine. Want to know anything about the drive?
Tell me what you want.
So this bulbous thing here,
Mm-hmm.
thing right here, it's called a universal joint, because it kind of can almost now, obviously, it's going to go that direction so far. Direction, they can go just about anywhere. Universal joints are usually on, I know for sure, on rear wheel drive cars, because it has a drive shaft that goes from the engine up front, and that drive shaft has to go all the way back. And so they use universal joints to allow this to play a little bit so it's not rigid. Allowing a little bit of play in it allows it to move. And then once it's allowed to move, because it's not just going to stay perfectly centered straight while it's running, it's going to want to move a little bit, and keeping it rigid will cause it to break sooner, cause more wear and tear. Allowing it to move, it won't really do that anymore. Also, it makes it a lot easier to work with, because now it can just hang down instead of having to be in a rigid, fixed position. So the way the drive works, so from top to bottom, there's oil in here, a special type of oil called gear oil. this stuff stinks. All right. And there's a bunch of so there's a gear up here that kind of turns. So this turns in a clockwise or counterclockwise manner. I'm not really sure.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on whichever direction the engine's running. And then so it's going this way, but then it has to convert that turning vertically downward. And so that's what the gear up here does. But then when you get down to the bottom, the propeller's not spinning downward, it's spinning out the back. So then it has to transfer it again to go out the back. So there's really two sets of gears in here. There's one up top and one down at bottom. And then somewhere, I think, somewhere down the bottom, there's that water pump that I was telling you about earlier. And it comes out this hole right here. You can kind of comes out this hole right here. And then there's yeah. And there's another hole over here that's kind of rusty. You can't really see. And that's where the exhaust, quote unquote, exhaust goes. Because usually what boat engines do, all the exhaust gases, it mixes it with the outflowing coolant water. And so that way, and that's where it exhausts, is out in the water. It's also because, particularly in, I think all boats really, you need to make sure there's a continual water flow, because if you don't have that coolant in there, it causes the engine to overheat and cause it to seize up, and then you have other issues to worry about. Some boat engines have self-contained yeah, not all boat engines do have that. Some boats do have a cooler or a radiator, kind of like cars. So they have cooling systems that cool the engine. And they probably they're exhausted in a different manner. Yeah. So yeah, that's all I got. I've talked your ears off.
You're fun. I was here for it.
Any questions? Any at all? They don't even have to be related to the boat engine.
What's 5 times 52 plus 3?
5 times 52 plus 3?
Yeah.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 250, 5, 10, 250, 260, 263.
Nice. All right, that's all I had. You know what's funny though? I feel the exact same way I would if I had actually been there to watch you do all that, and that's hungry. I feel like I worked up an appetite and I wasn't even there.
I ate before I started, so it's okay. I'm not.
Yeah, I had a small snack, but I'm still hungry.
Yeah, chicken tendies.
I'm actually about to make some because I'm hungry.
All right, well, I guess if you don't have any questions, I'm done.
Nope. All right. I'm about to go write a paper.
All right, sounds good. See you later, man.
Thank you. I'll see you, Tyler.
See you later.